Hi, welcome to today's episode. If you are watching this on YouTube, I'd really appreciate it if you just hit the subscribe button. And if you're listening to this on a podcast, then go ahead and follow the show because then you won't miss any of our future episodes. Today, I'm going to be talking about how you can deal with being triggered by your child, and specifically by the parts of your child that you had to shut down as a child yourself. So this is really all about conscious parenting, learning how to parent in a way that's going to set your children up for good emotional health long term, which is, kind of the point of all of it, in my opinion, anyway. So often when we are triggered by our child, and when I say triggered, what I mean is that obviously when we're thinking about children, well, kind of preteen and teenagers as well. In fact, it's difficult. There's always going to be things about the whole process that's going to be hard work in some way, because a lot of our role as parents is to be emotionally regulating them. It's to be offering them kind of lending them our calm nervous system. That's ideally what we're doing when we're parenting. But obviously that's difficult because we're humans as well. We have variable moods. Sometimes we're tired, sometimes we're not well, sometimes we're under a lot of stress. So it's always challenging. But when we say being triggered by our children, really what I'm meaning is when something feels really, really difficult and it kind of sends you back into, or it pushes you into an emotional state that feels not very grown up. So it feels not very kind of mature. Maybe you feel just extra emotional. Maybe you feel quickly overwhelmed. Maybe you're sent back into a state that feels familiar from your own childhood. It's just when something that they do or say really sparks something in you that kind of throws you off balance, right? So it's different than just it's difficult or it's sort of kind of hard work. It's not quite that. It goes deeper than that and it's more intense than that. And typically, the parts of your child's behaviour that is going to be triggering is going to be related to something that you were not allowed to do as a child. So that's really what this episode is about, and I'll go into what that means in more detail in just a moment. But I do want to mention that the Conscious Parenting Bundle is available now. It's only available until the end of next week. But that is me teaching you how to parent consciously. And it's not a kind of scripted approach. It's not say this to be a conscious parent. It's more about you embodying it, becoming aware of yourself, becoming more attuned and understanding of your children's emotions, of your own emotions, but just becoming calmer and more able to stay steady. It's not robot parenting, though. It's not kind of constantly just being calm and tolerant all the time. That's not realistic. We are humans parenting, raising humans. We need to be human. We need to be emotional. But conscious parenting is about just doing that with a level of awareness and with some tools to keep you feeling more able to be steady for longer, really, with your children. So that is available at the moment, and that I'll pop that link in the show notes. But let's think about this idea then of what it means to be triggered by something that you had to shut down. So typically more traditional parenting, or we could think of it as more unconscious parenting, typically because more traditional parenting normally was just a sort of repetition of what that person or that parent had kind of experienced themselves as a child, right? There's an unconscious quality to it. Also, we might talk about this as emotionally immature parenting. So this kind of style, which is something that you may have experienced yourself, there tends to be a lot of suppression involved. So there tends to be suppression of either emotion or certain emotions, or possibly both, and or behaviours as well. Okay, so let's think about the emotions part first. with conscious parenting and more emotionally mature parenting, emotions are all good. They're all okay. They're all welcome. They're all useful to some extent, and they're really not that harmful. They're really not that big of a deal. That's the perception anyway, once you get into that state of feeling more conscious as a parent. However, with emotionally immature parenting, certain emotions are likely to have been not okay. So this can also be gendered. So it can look like it's not okay for girls to be angry, for example, and it's not okay for boys to be sad. So there might have been that kind of messaging. If you have siblings, sometimes it varies between siblings. And there's just this implication within the family dynamic that certain emotions are just kind of not really approved of. And this is often done quite subtly. Sometimes it's not so subtle, but it doesn't need to be as clear as thinking, okay, well, did my mum or dad ever say don't be angry, or don't be jealous, or don't be possessive over things? No, they might not have literally said that, but that there would have been some implication via their reaction, via their response, when you displayed certain emotions that you would have picked up on. Children are really, really intuitive naturally. All human beings are naturally intuitive, so children tend to have retained that still, and they pick up on things really, really quickly, and they're always watching. They're always watching what their parents are doing, how their parents are responding, reacting to them. So it may be that you experience this more traditional, unconscious, immature approach to your emotions, parenting your emotions. So all of that involves receiving this message that certain ways of being are not okay, certain things are not okay. Okay, so that's one part of it. The other part is that this more unconscious style of parenting tends to also suppress behaviours. Now, this is more complex to think about, because of course there are some behaviours that are not okay, right? It's not okay for a child to go and hit their sibling, or to be physical, to be kicking somebody, for example. So we can agree on that. However, the difference between the different parenting styles is that emotionally immature parenting comes with this implication that when you do certain things, I'm going to love you a little bit less. And that's where the shame comes in, that's where the fear comes in, and that's where the suppression comes in, right? Because then at that point, if there's this implication, and this is all done, as I say, this can be done not so subtly. Sometimes that's a really clear, maybe you have very punishing parents or very critical parents, but there's also a more subtle way that this can be communicated, which is that a parent sees a child doing something that they don't approve of, and they'll withdraw their love from them. Essentially, they'll ignore them. They will maybe just say something kind of cutting or shaming, and then they just don't really engage with them, don't really give them much back for the next half an hour or something. And so what this leads to is that shutting down. It's that suppression of that feeling, that suppression of that of that urge as well, that kind of drive. And so then if we think about a more conscious parenting approach to behaviours that like hitting and kicking and kind of that physical behaviours, there's still the boundary of that's not okay, but it doesn't come with that withering feeling of, and I'm going to withdraw from you if you do it, and I'm going to punish you, or I'm going to criticise you. It's more of a statement, and love is not withdrawn, comfort is not withdrawn, but it's a clear boundary that's been set. So if you experienced this more immature parenting style, you will have shut down certain parts of yourself. You'll have shut down certain parts or certain things about your certain emotions, certain ways that you maybe want to respond, things that you might want to say or do. At some point, all of these things will have been suppressed and shut down. And so then when you are faced by these things in your own child, it triggers those intense feelings that you would have felt at the time as a child, first of all. It also comes with the impulse that it needs to be eradicated. It needs to be shut down in exactly the same way as you would have felt like yourself. So let me give you an example here. So I had an enmeshed relationship with my mother. So what that meant is that she didn't really see me as a separate kind of autonomous individual. And there was a lot of expectation around being codependent, around agreeing with her, not upsetting her, kind of making sure that she was okay, looking after her emotionally, and really just being good and being compliant. And I have a daughter now, she's 5. And one of the hardest parts of the relationship for me, or one of the things that triggers me the most, is when I feel rejected by her. When I feel like she wants her dad instead of me, or she doesn't want to engage, or maybe she's annoyed with me about something. Now, all of these things are entirely normal and appropriate and healthy for her to feel. It's very normal that sometimes she wants to reject me. That's part of actually what makes it not codependent. That's part of her being autonomous and recognizing her own needs, her own feelings, her own desires in that moment, and choosing herself instead of choosing to keep me happy. So this is all good stuff, but it triggers me. It feels really hard. And that's because I wasn't allowed to do it myself. I was never allowed to reject my mother. If I had, it would have resulted in some form of criticism, punishment, or withdrawal of love or withdrawal of contact, which actually the withdrawal part is worse, really, psychologically speaking. Often because then as a child, you're sort of, if you're cut off from contact with your mother or parent, then you really feel like you're on an island. You really feel like you're kind of on your own, and that triggers lots of survival instinct stuff that can feel really quite unnerving. So I just was never allowed to be a child that rejected my mother, even though there will, of course, have been times when she would have done something that would have upset me, or that would have hurt me, or that, or maybe I just would have felt like it, right? Just like all normal relationships, they kind of fluctuate. Some days you feel particularly close to someone, and some days you don't really. But I was never allowed to reject her. And so when Afra does reject me, when my daughter does reject me, I feel, as I say, I find it really, really difficult. So how then do we bring the conscious parenting aspect in, and how do we kind of manage this? So ultimately, the conscious part is being aware. So being aware that it's difficult for me, and then sitting with that. So rather than then trying to change it, whether that be through, there are 100 ways I could make her not reject me in those moments, right? When she says, where's daddy? I want to see daddy. I don't want to see you. I could feign sadness. Well, it wouldn't be feigning it. I would feel sad, but I could be, really communicating to her, oh, that's making me feel really sad after that you're saying that, which would be really emotionally, manipulative. I could get cross with her, which undoubtedly would shut it down, and she wouldn't do it as much in the future. There are so many different options, but instead what I do is hold it myself, because I'm an adult. So I need to be developing my capacity to hold these difficult emotions, these feelings of rejection, all of the emotions that come with that, that are, essentially my inner child shouting and screaming, no, you're not allowed to do that. That's not okay to do. I need to be doing that work on myself. So I sit with it and I hold it, and it hurts, and that's okay. It's okay to feel hurt, and I know that I will be able to cope with that. And then I remind myself of why. Remind myself that it's a beautiful thing that she can be herself, that she feels safe enough to reject me and knows that I'll be here when she comes back. And I dig deep into that. So there's this kind of dual process with conscious parenting where you are recognizing and really staying in line with the child's developmental needs and stages and kind of where they're at. And you're also parenting yourself. You're also recognizing your own emotions. You're validating those. This isn't about me saying, oh, I shouldn't be feeling that, or or there's something wrong. No, I'm feeling it, and therefore it's okay. And so you're kind of also staying in line with yourself at the same time. There's this dual process. This is why it can feel quite, it feels like harder work in the moment, because there are these two things happening at the same time, right? But the more you do it, the more you practice being aligned and understanding of and aware of your child's emotional experience and needs and stage and their process, and also doing the same with yourself here and now and your inner child and those feelings from your past. The more you get used to doing this kind of dual process, it becomes easier to hold, and it becomes kind of the same process, right? You're parenting your child, but you're also parenting yourself. This is what conscious parenting is. This is what all parenting invites us to do. Whether we kind of take that on and go with that or not is something different. And also, on different days this feels easier than on other days, which is perfectly fine. There will be times when it's too difficult to go that more kind of conscious, aware, mature, emotionally mature route, when that just feels hard or too difficult maybe, and that's fine, and you just reset again. But on those days when you can, it's holding their emotion and yours, and knowing that you can cope with both. And then kind of in little bits, and as you go forward, you're just learning, you're skilling yourself more and more. You're giving yourself the skills more and more to cope with your own difficult feelings and to heal yourself and to attend to that part of you that is being triggered, to attend to that wound, really, that original wound that is being kind of brought to light in that moment by your child. So hopefully that has been helpful. As I say, do follow along or subscribe. The Conscious Parenting Bundle is available now, and it will teach you some of these things that I've talked about here in much more detail. So do take care, and I'll see you next time.